Barbara Fletcher stood in her kitchen at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in November, staring at the coffee maker as it gurgled and hissed. The sound seemed extraordinarily loud in the silence of her house, a silence she still wasn't used to, even 6 months after Richard had moved out. At 62 years old, Barbara was alone for the first time in her adult life. Truly alone. No husband. No children at home. Michael was 40 and lived in Boston with his family, and Jennifer was 37 in Denver. No roommates. No pets even. Just Barbara and this too-big house that had once been filled with noise and chaos and life. She'd been married to Richard for 39 years. 39 years of sharing space, sharing meals, sharing a bed. They'd raised 2 children together, weathered job losses and health scares, celebrated anniversaries and holidays. It hadn't been a perfect marriage. Nothing was perfect, but it had been comfortable, familiar, safe. Until last April, when Richard sat her down at this very kitchen table and said, "Barbara, I'm not happy. I haven't been happy for a long time. I think we should separate." The divorce had been surprisingly civilized. No screaming fights, no bitter custody battles over grown children. Just lawyers and paperwork, and the methodical division of a lifetime. Richard had moved into a condo downtown. Barbara had kept the house, the 4-bedroom colonial they'd bought when Jennifer was a baby. The house she now rattled around in like a dried pea in a too-large pod. Barbara poured her coffee and stood at the kitchen window, looking out at the November morning. The maple tree in the backyard was nearly bare now, just a few stubborn leaves clinging to the branches. The garden she'd once lovingly tended was dormant for winter. Everything looked dormant, dead almost. She felt dead too most days. This wasn't how she'd imagined her 60s. She'd pictured growing old with Richard, becoming those comfortable older couples you see at restaurants, sharing dessert and finishing each other's sentences. She'd pictured grandchildren visiting, retirement trips together, the slow, gentle decline into elderhood with a partner by her side. Instead, she was alone, single. A newly divorced woman at 62, facing an uncertain future with no one to share it with. The loneliness was crushing. It pressed down on her chest at night when she lay in her bed, reaching automatically for a body that wasn't there. It ambushed her in the evenings when she ate dinner in front of the TV because the silence of the dining room was unbearable. It lurked in the mornings like this when she made coffee for 1 instead of 2. Barbara's phone buzzed. A text from her daughter Jennifer. "Morning, Mom! Hope you're having a good day. Love you." Jennifer meant well. Both her children did. They called regularly, checked in, invited her to visit. But they had their own lives, their own families, their own concerns. She couldn't burden them with the depth of her loneliness, the way some nights she sat in the dark, crying for no particular reason, except that she was so completely, overwhelmingly alone. She texted back, "Morning, sweetheart, all good here, love you too." A lie, but a necessary one. Barbara finished her coffee, got dressed, and prepared for another day at the accounting firm where she'd worked part-time for the past 15 years. Work, at least, gave her somewhere to be, something to focus on besides the emptiness of her life. But as she drove to work, she caught herself thinking the same thought that had been circling her mind for months. Is this it? Is this all there is? Loneliness until I die? The thought terrified her. The holiday season was approaching, and with it came an avalanche of invitations that only highlighted Barbara's solitary state. "Come to Thanksgiving," her sister Carol urged. "The whole family will be there." "Join us for Christmas," her friend Denise offered. "You shouldn't be alone on Christmas." Everyone meant well. Everyone was trying to help. But Barbara felt like a charity case. A problem to be solved. The sad divorced woman everyone pitied. She went to Thanksgiving at Carol's. Sat at the long table, surrounded by couples. Her sister and brother-in-law, her nephew and his wife, her niece and her husband. Everyone paired off. Everyone except Barbara, sitting alone at the end of the table like a leftover puzzle piece that didn't fit anywhere. "How are you doing, Barbara?" Carol asked with that particular tone of concerned sympathy that made Barbara want to scream. "I'm fine," Barbara lied again. "We worry about you being alone." "I'm managing." But she wasn't managing, she was drowning. The breaking point came 3 weeks before Christmas. Barbara was invited to a holiday party by coworkers. She almost didn't go, what was the point? But forced herself to attend because staying home alone felt even worse. The party was pleasant enough, small talk, holiday cookies, someone's playlist of Christmas music. Barbara stood in the corner with a glass of wine, watching her coworkers laugh and chat, feeling utterly disconnected from the joy around her. A woman named Susan approached. Recently divorced, Barbara remembered. "How are you holding up?" Susan asked. "I'm okay," Barbara said automatically. "Really? Because you look how I felt 6 months after my divorce, like you're barely holding it together." The unexpected honesty broke something loose in Barbara. "I'm so lonely," she whispered. "I'm 62 and completely alone, and I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be by myself." Susan nodded knowingly. "It's the hardest thing, isn't it? After decades of being someone's wife, someone's mother, suddenly you're just you, and you don't even know who that is anymore." Exactly. Barbara felt tears threatening. "Everyone keeps telling me I'll adjust, that it gets easier. But when? It's been 6 months and I still feel like I'm suffocating." "Can I tell you something?" Susan said gently. "It took me almost a year before I stopped feeling like I was dying. But here's what nobody tells you. That feeling, that terrible, crushing loneliness, it's not actually the enemy. It's the doorway." "Doorway to what?" "To yourself, to freedom, to figuring out who you are when you're not defined by your relationships to other people." Barbara shook her head. "I don't want freedom. I want not to be alone." "Those aren't the same thing," Susan said. "Being alone and being lonely, they're not the same thing either. I had to learn that the hard way." After the party, Barbara drove home through the December darkness, Susan's words circling in her mind. Being alone and being lonely aren't the same thing. But they felt the same. In her empty house, in her empty bed, in her empty life, they felt exactly the same. That night, Barbara did something she'd been avoiding for months. She made an appointment with a therapist. Dr. Linda Chen's office was warm and comfortable, filled with plants and soft lighting that made Barbara feel slightly less exposed as she sat on the couch and tried to explain why she was there. "I'm 62 and recently divorced after 39 years of marriage," Barbara began. "And I'm drowning in loneliness. I don't know how to be alone. I've never been alone. I went from my parents' house to college with roommates, to getting married at 23. I've always had someone, and now I don't, and I don't know who I am without that." Dr. Chen listened without judgment, her expression calm and attentive. "Tell me about yourself, Barbara. Not about being someone's wife or mother, just about you." Barbara opened her mouth to answer and realized she had no idea what to say. I like reading?" It came out as a question, uncertain. "What do you like to read?" "I don't know. I haven't really read anything in years. Richard always wanted to watch TV at night, and there never seemed to be time." "What about hobbies? Things you do for pleasure?" Again, Barbara drew a blank. "I used to garden. But that was more about keeping the yard nice for the house. I don't know if I actually enjoyed it, or if it was just another task." "What makes you happy, Barbara?" The question should have been simple. Instead, it felt impossible. What made her happy? She genuinely didn't know. For 39 years, her happiness had been derived from making others happy. Making Richard comfortable. Making her children's lives run smoothly. Being the good wife, the good mother, the reliable one everyone could count on. But what did Barbara want? What did Barbara enjoy? Who was Barbara when no one needed her to be anything? "I don't know," she admitted, tears spilling over. "I don't know who I am. That's the problem. I'm 62 years old and I don't know the first thing about myself." Dr. Chen handed her a tissue. "That's actually not a problem, Barbara. That's an opportunity." "It doesn't feel like an opportunity. It feels like a crisis." "Maybe it's both. You've spent your entire adult life meeting other people's needs, fulfilling roles that other people assign to you. Now, for the first time, you have the freedom to discover what you actually want. That's terrifying, yes. But it's also a gift. Barbara thought about Susan's words at the party, the doorway. I don't know how to start, Barbara said. Let's start here. What did you love doing before you got married? Before children? What did 22-year-old Barbara dream about? Barbara thought back. It felt like reaching through fog, trying to remember a person who'd existed 40 years ago. I wanted to travel, she said slowly. I had this fantasy about backpacking through Europe, seeing art museums, eating in small cafes, just exploring. And did you? No. Richard and I got married, and then I got pregnant with Michael right away. We needed to save money, be responsible. There was never time for backpacking trips. What else? I liked writing. I kept journals, wrote poetry. Nothing good, it made me happy to put words on paper. When did you stop? Barbara tried to remember. I don't know. Sometime after the kids were born. Life got busy. Writing seemed self-indulgent when there were diapers to change and meals to cook. Dr. Chen leaned forward. Barbara, I want to give you homework. For the next week, I want you to do something every day just for yourself. Something that serves no purpose except that it brings you pleasure or curiosity or joy. It doesn't have to be big, just something that's purely for Barbara, not for anyone else. Like what? That's for you to discover. But here's the key. You have to do it alone. This isn't about finding activities to fill the loneliness with other people. This is about learning to be with yourself, to enjoy your own company. Barbara left the session feeling unsettled but oddly hopeful. Do something just for herself. Every day. It seemed both impossibly simple and terrifyingly difficult. That evening, instead of eating dinner in front of the TV as she usually did, Barbara did something different. She set the table properly, cloth napkin, real dishes, a glass of wine. She lit a candle. She made herself a nice meal, not just heating up leftovers. And then she sat down and ate slowly, mindfully, paying attention to the taste of the food, the warmth of the wine, the flickering of the candle. It felt strange, self-conscious. She kept expecting someone to walk in and ask what she was doing, making such a fuss for just herself. But no one did, because she was alone. And for the first time, the alone didn't feel quite as crushing. It felt peaceful, quiet in a way that wasn't empty, but rather full of space. After dinner, Barbara pulled out an old journal from a box in her closet. The pages were blank. She'd bought it years ago with the intention of writing in it, but life had gotten in the way. She sat at the kitchen table and wrote, I am 62 years old, and I don't know who I am. But I'm going to find out. The homework from Dr. Chen became Barbara's lifeline over the following weeks. Every day, she did something small just for herself. She went to a bookstore, not to buy books for her grandchildren or gifts for others, but just for herself. She wandered the aisles, pulling books off shelves based purely on whether the covers or titles intrigued her. She ended up with a stack of novels, a travel memoir, and a book about astronomy that she had no practical reason to own, but that sparked something curious in her. She went to a museum on a Tuesday afternoon, taking a sick day from work. Walked through the galleries at her own pace, spending 20 minutes staring at a single painting just because she wanted to. No one hurrying her along, no one getting bored and ready to leave, just Barbara and the art. She started cooking again, really cooking, not just reheating or making quick meals. She tried new recipes from a cookbook she'd received as a gift years ago but never opened. Made elaborate dishes just for herself, savoring the process of creating something beautiful even if she was the only one who'd eat it. She bought herself flowers. Every week, a small bouquet from the grocery store. It felt indulgent and silly at first. Flowers for herself? How pathetic. But then she realized, why did flowers need to come from someone else to have value? Why couldn't she gift them to herself? The flowers brightened her kitchen. More importantly, they were a reminder that she was worth the small luxury, the small kindness. She began writing in her journal every evening, not trying to write anything good or profound, just letting thoughts flow onto the page. Some nights, she wrote about the loneliness that still gripped her. Other nights about small moments of beauty. The way sunlight hit the frost on her car window, the perfect foam on her morning latte, the satisfaction of finishing a really good book. Slowly, imperceptibly, something was shifting. One Saturday morning, Barbara woke up and realized she had the entire day ahead of her, with no plans, no obligations, no one expecting anything from her. Instead of the familiar dread, she felt something different, possibility. What did she want to do today? The question no longer felt paralyzing, it felt exciting. She decided to drive to a nearby town she'd always been curious about. Just got in her car and went. No itinerary, no plan. Wandered through antique shops, ate lunch at a small cafe, explored a park she'd never been to before. She was alone, but she wasn't lonely. The difference startled her. All day, by herself, and she'd enjoyed it. Actually enjoyed her own company, her own thoughts, her own choices. That evening, she called Jennifer. "How are you doing, Mom?" Jennifer asked, that familiar note of worry in her voice. "I'm good," Barbara said. And for the first time in months, it was true. "I'm actually good." "Really? You're not just saying that?" "No, I mean it. I had a really nice day today. Went exploring by myself. Just enjoyed being." There was a pause. "Mom, I'm so glad. Dad leaving. I know it's been so hard on you. We've been worried." "I know, and it has been hard. But I think I'm figuring something out." "What's that?" "That being alone isn't the worst thing that can happen. That I'm actually pretty good company for myself." Jennifer laughed, relief evident in her voice. "I like hearing you say that." After they hung up, Barbara sat on her couch, in her house, in her life that was fully, completely hers, and felt something unfamiliar blooming in her chest. Not happiness, exactly, but something close, something like contentment, like peace. 3 months into her journey of self-discovery, Barbara had a session with Dr. Chen that changed everything. "You seem different," Dr. Chen observed. "Lighter somehow." "I feel different," Barbara admitted. "I've been doing the homework, the daily practices, and something's shifting." "Tell me about it." "It's weird, but I'm starting to like being alone. Not all the time. I still get lonely sometimes. But there are moments where I'm by myself, and I feel this sense of freedom, like I can breathe fully for the first time in decades." "What does that feel like?" Barbara searched for words. "It's like, for my entire adult life, I've been performing. Being the person Richard needed me to be. Being the mother my kids needed. Being the employee my boss needed. The friend people expected. I was constantly adjusting myself to fit other people's needs and expectations. And now? Now I can just be. I can eat breakfast at 10 a.m. if I want. I can leave dishes in the sink. I can read for 3 hours straight without anyone getting bored or needing something. I can make plans or not make plans. Everything is my choice." Dr. Chen smiled. "You're discovering autonomy." "Is that what this is? It feels revolutionary." "For women especially, particularly women of your generation, autonomy is revolutionary. You were raised to be caretakers, to define yourselves through relationships, to make everyone else comfortable. Actually prioritizing your own needs, your own desires, that goes against everything you were taught." Barbara thought about this. "My mother was married at 20 and had 4 kids by 30. She never lived alone, never had her own money, never made a decision without checking with my father first. I swore I'd be different, but looking back, was I really? What do you think? I had my own career, but I always deferred to Richard on big decisions. The house we bought, the vacations we took, how we spent money, where we lived. I told myself we decided together, but really I just agreed with what he wanted. It was easier than arguing. And now? Now I'm making every decision. Some are easy, what to eat, what to watch, how to spend my Saturday. But some are bigger. I'm thinking about selling this house. It's too big for me, too full of memories. I want something smaller, something that's just mine. How does that feel? Terrifying, exciting, like I'm becoming a different person. Or maybe, Dr. Chen suggested, you're becoming who you actually are. The person you would have been if you hadn't spent 40 years molding yourself to fit other people's expectations. That night, Barbara couldn't sleep. Dr. Chen's words kept echoing. Becoming who you actually are. Who was she? At 62, was it too late to find out? She got up and made tea, sat at her kitchen table with her journal, wrote, "Things I've discovered about myself. I like quiet. Not silence that feels empty, but quiet that feels full of space and possibility. I like cooking elaborate meals just for me. It's not sad or pathetic, it's self-care. I like spontaneity, the freedom to change plans, to follow a whim, to not answer to anyone. I like my own company, I'm interesting. I have thoughts worth thinking, observations worth noting. I like being untethered, no one's expectations weighing me down." She paused, pen hovering over paper, then wrote, "I don't miss Richard as much as I thought I would. I miss the idea of not being alone, but I don't actually miss him. Maybe I haven't for years." The realization should have made her sad. Instead, it felt like permission. Spring arrived, bringing with it a sense of renewal that Barbara felt in her bones. She'd made it through the hardest winter of her life, the first winter alone in 40 years, and she'd survived. More than survived, she'd discovered things. She decided to take a trip, by herself, to Italy, one of the places she'd dreamed of seeing when she was 22. "Mom, that's amazing," Jennifer said when Barbara told her. "But are you sure you want to go alone? I could take time off, come with you." "Thank you, sweetheart, but I want to go alone, I need to." "Okay, if you're sure. I'm proud of you, Mom." Michael was more concerned. "Is it safe for a woman your age to travel alone? What if something happens?" Barbara laughed. "Michael, I'm 62, not 90. I'll be fine." But his question nagged at her. A woman your age. As if 62 meant fragile, incapable, in need of protection. She booked the trip anyway. 2 weeks in Italy, staying in small hotels, no fixed itinerary, just her and the open road. The trip was transformative. Barbara wandered through Florence and Rome and the Tuscan countryside, ate in small restaurants, talking to locals in her broken Italian, spent hours in museums, in churches, in piazzas, just observing and being. She met other solo travelers, mostly women, many her age or older, all with similar stories. Divorced, widowed, simply choosing to see the world on their own terms. One evening in a small town in Tuscany, Barbara sat at an outdoor cafe with a glass of wine and her journal, watching the sun set over the rolling hills. A woman at the next table, probably in her 70s, silver hair, sun-weathered face, leaned over. "First time traveling alone?" she asked with a knowing smile. Barbara nodded. "Is it that obvious? You have that look, that mix of, I can't believe I'm doing this, and this is the best thing I've ever done." Barbara laughed. "That's exactly how I feel." "I'm Marie," the woman said. "Mind if I join you?" They talked for hours. Marie had been widowed at 65, spent 2 years in crushing grief, then decided that if she was going to live the rest of her life alone, she was going to do it on her own terms. That had been 10 years ago. She'd been traveling solo ever since. "Don't you get lonely?" Barbara asked. "Sometimes. But I've learned to distinguish between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is painful. It's about missing something, feeling incomplete. Solitude is peaceful. It's about being complete on your own." How do you tell the difference? Loneliness makes you feel empty. Solitude makes you feel full. Loneliness makes you desperate for any company. Solitude makes you selective about whose energy you invite into your space. Barbara thought about this. "I think I've been confusing the two. I was so terrified of being lonely that I didn't realize solitude could be a gift." "It's the best gift," Marie said. "And no one can give it to you. You have to claim it yourself." When Barbara returned home from Italy, she was different. Browner from the sun, yes, but also brighter somehow. More present, more sure. Her house no longer felt empty. It felt peaceful. Hers. She started hosting dinners, just for herself. Would spend hours preparing beautiful meals, setting an elegant table, eating slowly while listening to music or reading. It became a weekly ritual, a way of honoring herself and her own company. She took up painting, signed up for a class at the community center, bought supplies, set up a small studio in the spare bedroom. She was terrible at it. No natural talent. But she loved it anyway. Loved the meditative quality of applying paint to canvas, the way time disappeared when she was absorbed in creating something. She started saying no to things she didn't want to do. Invitations from well-meaning friends to set her up with single men. Family obligations that felt more draining than nourishing. Any activity that was about filling time rather than enriching her life. She said yes to things that excited her. A writing workshop, a hiking group for women over 60, volunteering at a literacy program, weekend trips to places she'd always wanted to see. 6 months after returning from Italy, Barbara realized something profound. She was happy. Actually, genuinely happy. Not the happiness that comes from being in a relationship or being needed by others, but the happiness that comes from being fully alive, fully yourself, fully present in your own life. She was 63 years old, living alone, and she'd never felt more free. One evening, Barbara's sister Carol called with an invitation. "I'm having a birthday party for Tom next month. Will you come? And feel free to bring someone if you're seeing anyone." "I'll come, but I'll be coming alone," Barbara said. "Still, Barbara, it's been over a year since the divorce. Haven't you met anyone? You can't just be alone forever." Barbara felt the familiar flare of irritation. "Why not?" "What do you mean, why not? You're lonely. You need companionship." "I'm not lonely, Carol. I have plenty of companionship. Friends, family, my own company. I'm very happy as I am." "But don't you want to find someone? Fall in love again? You're still young enough." "Carol, stop." Barbara kept her voice gentle but firm. "I need you to hear me. I'm not lonely. I'm not missing anything. I've spent this past year discovering who I am outside of being someone's wife. And it's been the best year of my life. I'm not looking for a relationship. I'm complete as I am." There was silence on the other end. Then, carefully, "You really mean that?" "I really mean that. I worry about you. Being alone." "I know you do. But Carol, being alone and being lonely aren't the same thing. I'm alone by choice now, and it's wonderful. I'm free in ways I never knew I could be." After they hung up, Barbara thought about that conversation. Society had such fixed ideas about what life should look like, especially for women. You were supposed to pair up, be someone's partner, find your other half. But what if you were already whole? What if the goal wasn't to find someone to complete you, but to become so complete in yourself that a relationship was optional, not necessary? Barbara had spent a year learning to be alone. Really alone. Not filling every moment with distractions or surrounding herself with people to avoid the silence. Actually sitting with herself, getting to know herself, learning to enjoy her own company. And in that solitude, she discovered a version of herself she'd never known existed. A Barbara who was bold enough to travel solo through Italy. Creative enough to paint terrible paintings and not care. Confident enough to eat alone in restaurants without feeling self-conscious. Strong enough to make every decision about her life without consulting anyone else. She didn't need a relationship. She didn't need to be someone's wife again. She didn't need to prove her worth through being partnered. She was enough. All by herself. Completely, perfectly enough. That didn't mean she was closed off to the possibility of connection. But if it happened, it would be from a place of wholeness, not neediness. Of wanting to share her full life with someone, not needing someone to complete an incomplete life. The distinction mattered. A year and a half after her divorce, Barbara ran into Susan, the woman from the holiday party who'd first talked to her about the doorway of loneliness. "Barbara, you look amazing," Susan said. "Seriously, you're glowing. What happened?" They grabbed coffee, and Barbara told her story, the therapy, the daily practices, the trip to Italy, the slow discovery of who she was when she wasn't defined by relationships to others. "You found it," Susan said with satisfaction. "The freedom on the other side of the loneliness." "I have. And Susan, I need to thank you. That night at the party, when you told me loneliness was a doorway, I didn't believe you. But you were right. I'm so glad. You know what you should do? You should share this. There are so many women going through what you went through. Newly divorced or widowed, terrified of being alone, thinking their lives are over. They need to hear your story." The seed Susan planted grew in Barbara's mind. She started writing, not just journal entries anymore, but essays about her journey. The fear of loneliness. The terror of being alone. The slow, surprising discovery that solitude could be a gift rather than a curse. She started a blog, The Unexpected Gift of Being Alone, posted her essays, her reflections, her hard-won insights. The response was overwhelming. Women from all over 60s, 70s, even some in their 50s and 80s, reached out to share their own stories. Many were going through divorces or dealing with widowhood. Many felt like their lives were ending. Many were terrified of being alone. Barbara wrote back to each one, sharing her experience, offering encouragement. She started leading a monthly discussion group at her local library, Women Living Solo After 60. The first meeting, she expected maybe 5 women. 20 showed up. They shared stories, fears, discoveries. Many were at the beginning of their journey, raw with grief or anger or fear. Others were further along, finding joy and freedom in their solitude. Barbara facilitated discussions on practical topics: managing finances alone, traveling solo, creating routines that nourished rather than just filled time. But the deeper conversations were about identity, about unlearning the idea that being alone meant being less than, about discovering who you were when you weren't performing for anyone. I spent 50 years being someone's something, one woman named Helen shared. Someone's daughter, someone's wife, someone's mother. Now I'm just me. And I have no idea who that is. It's terrifying. It is terrifying, Barbara agreed. But it's also liberating. For the first time in your life, you get to decide who you are. You get to discover what you actually want, not what everyone else wanted from you. The group became the highlight of Barbara's month. Watching women transform from frightened and lonely to confident and content reminded her of her own journey. Reminded her how far she'd come. 2 years later, on the second anniversary of her divorce, Barbara sat on her back patio, the patio of her new house, a cozy 2-bedroom cottage she'd bought after selling the Colonial. The morning sun was warm, birds were singing, and she had a cup of coffee and her journal. She wrote, 2 years ago today, my marriage ended. I thought my life was ending too. I was wrong. My life was just beginning. These past 2 years have been the hardest, most challenging, most transformative years of my life. I've cried more, grown more, discovered more about myself than in the previous 6 decades combined. I've learned that loneliness is not a life sentence. It's a doorway. A painful, difficult doorway, but a doorway nonetheless, to discovering who you really are. I've learned that being alone is not the same as being lonely, that solitude can be peaceful, nourishing, even joyful. I've learned that I am enough. All by myself. I don't need a relationship to complete me because I'm not incomplete. I've learned that my worth is not determined by whether someone chooses me, loves me, stays with me. My worth is inherent, unchanging, mine. I've learned to enjoy my own company, to make decisions based solely on what I want, to live according to my own values and desires, rather than performing for others. I've learned that it's never too late to discover who you are, that at 64 I'm still evolving, still growing, still becoming. Most importantly, I've learned that the gift of being alone is the gift of being fully yourself. Barbara closed her journal and looked around her garden, smaller than the old one, but entirely hers, planted with flowers she chose because she loved them, not because they looked good from the street. Her life looked different than she'd imagined. She was alone, single, no partner to grow old with. But she wasn't lonely. She had friends, family, community. She had purpose and passion and peace. She had her painting, her writing, her travels, her group of women navigating solo life. Most importantly, she had herself. Fully, completely, joyfully herself. The doorbell rang. Marie, her friend from Italy who'd relocated to the same town, arriving for their weekly hiking date. "Ready?" Marie called. "Ready," Barbara called back. As she grabbed her backpack and locked her door to her house, in her life that was entirely beautifully her own, Barbara felt a surge of gratitude. Gratitude for the divorce that had felt like death but turned out to be birth. Gratitude for the loneliness that had been the doorway to freedom. Gratitude for the courage to walk through that doorway instead of running away from it. At 64, Barbara Fletcher was alone. And she had never been happier.